You see here, kid? You gotta just go for it. Don't think about what comes after or what came before. You just gotta bend your knees, take a deep breath, and jump. And you might think, what if I fall? Well, what if you don't? What if you fly?
Switching command to internal.
From the Collaborative Studios, Open the Eye, where metaphysical, paranormal, and the unexplained meet. Open the Eye with Tanya Tyler.
Ayahuasca is a traditional Amazonian brew made from a vine and other plants, often including a leaf which contains the psychoactive compound DMT. Used in shamanic rituals for centuries, it induces powerful visionary experiences and deep introspection, often leading to insight about life and healing. Many people seek ayahuasca for its potential therapeutic benefits, particularly for issues like depression, trauma, and addiction. The experience can be intense and is often accompanied by physical purging.
Buckle up, people. We've got a fun show tonight. I'm very excited about this one. Do you know that I do all these shows on things that I'm very, very intrigued about? And I think if I'm intrigued, maybe you are too. Ayahuasca has been something that I've been intrigued with for quite some time. I have not got a calling to go do it, but I know a lot of people have. And I want to make sure that if this is something that you've maybe been thinking about, my next guest has so much knowledge. She has tipped her toe, her foot, her leg, everything in ayahuasca, and she's not shy because she thinks the education is really important to you. She's sharing her story. Her name is Ryan. I want to welcome you to the show, Ryan. Thank you so much for being here. Now, you were in corporate America. How long would you say you were in corporate America for?
Probably, I would say about 12 years I was in corporate America.
You're married?
Yep.
Kids?
3. So I have a 14-year-old, a 9-year-old, and a 3-year-old.
Let's talk a little bit about ayahuasca. Were you in your conventional corporate America job?
Yeah.
Wasn't like a retreat with them, was it?
No. I wish. That would really change corporate America, wouldn't it?
Right?
I always like to tell this story. There's nothing dramatic that happened. I was a pretty normal person, working 9 to 5, had the family, had a house. Really, from the outside looking in, really wonderful, great life. I got to a point, and I like to kind of preface this because your 20s are really exciting. I mean, you're all over the place. You're graduating from college, traveling. So I hit my 30s, and I had been in my job for a while. COVID hit. So that was a big shift, going to work every day. Now I was home. I actually had a great year in 2020. It was one of my favorite years. But after that, I got pregnant with my son. My mental state just kind of shifted after that. I had been really, really busy. Things had quieted down. I was pregnant with him. I hit a pretty rough batch of depression.
And you're pregnant at this time?
And I'm pregnant.
Okay, so
yeah.
It's not the depression after you have a baby. This is during the pregnancy.
During the pregnancy. Okay. Mm-hmm. Went to my normal avenues, went to therapy, started to get involved with different hobbies. That's what I would always do in the past when I was feeling a little low. But after he arrived, things went from bad to worse. And just every facet of my life, I started to feel this hopelessness. It just wasn't fulfilled. And I started asking myself this question of like, as great as my life is, and I don't want to sound ungrateful when I say this, but is this all there is? Is this what life is about? Struggling every day to get up early, drive to work, go to work all day, come home, rush to eat dinner, and then go to bed. It was just that monotony every day that kind of got to me.
Was this in 2021 then?
This was in 2021.
Okay.
Yeah.
So many people were going to kind of the same thing. They were all like, oh, what's happening in my world? So were people telling you it's just COVID? We just had to be shut down for a minute. Were people kind of telling you that stuff?
Yeah, I got a lot of that. And then obviously I just had a baby. So everyone went right to the hormones. I had not experienced hormones post-pregnancy that rough though. So I kind of knew something else was going on. So I had a therapist, and they had recommended that I go see a psychiatrist and look at medication. I had never been on medication at that point, so I was a little hesitant, but I went through with it. I got on my anti-anxiety medication. I felt better for a little bit, but then I started to see that there was no out of this medication. So kept asking, when can I start to taper this down? Can I get off of it? And I was never really able to get the answer I was looking for from my doctors. So I got redirected to let's try another prescription, let's do more therapy. And again, during that time, I was also recognizing that we're just solving the symptoms of what I'm feeling right now. Looking back now, I see that symptoms that you feel and those emotions that you feel, they're really valuable indicators of what's going on. And if we're just masking them all the time, we're not really able to go to the root of the problem. Got to this point where I was like, I want to solve the root of the problem. I don't want to just mask these symptoms all the time. It just felt like this hamster wheel in a way. I did what I do best. I got on the internet and I started researching. I started to see people talk about psychedelics and some of the early research that was happening around them. I came across ayahuasca. It took me at least 6 months to learn how to pronounce that word.
When you see it, you're not thinking ayahuasca. You're thinking ashwa. What?
Yeah. Anahuasca, I think is how I said it for a little bit. But the more I researched it and the more I looked into it, I looked everything in from just the effects on person's emotional state, the work with trauma that ayahuasca has been introduced into, even with addictions. So just different types of research that's been done. I was really interested and kind of dove myself into that. In addition to it, one thing I always thought was really helpful was talking to other people and hearing about their experiences. And I love this little tidbit. This is what I took from it is most people who have done ayahuasca rave about it. They say it's helped them, it's changed their life in so many ways. Most of the arguments against doing ayahuasca were by people who had never tried it. That still rings true today. And I talk to a lot of people about my experience and I find that people who are against it, they either don't understand it and they've never tried it.
You never really hear, I did ayahuasca and I'm never doing it ever again. We never see those people.
I've never heard that.
Right. Before we go into what the whole entire ayahuasca ritual is, let's go back because I want to talk about your childhood. What was your childhood like? Where did you grow up?
So I was a bit of a Navy brat, moved all over the place. I was born in Virginia Beach, moved up to upstate New York, then down to North Carolina, and I landed in New Jersey for most of my high school.
Okay, wow. You were all over.
So I'm the oldest of 3 girls. My parents, typical nuclear family. We had the sports on the weekends, nothing out of the ordinary, but I did grow up in an alcoholic family system. And it did take me a little while, way into my 20s, I would say, to really see that and understand how it affected me growing up. But I would say at the time, it wasn't anything that was in my toolbox of definitions.
It was a little off balance.
Yes. Yeah.
Okay. That's not bad. Go to school. You go to college.
Mm-hmm. Met my husband there. We had our daughter when I was a junior. She was a surprise baby, I like to say. And then I got my degree. Because we had a small child, we moved back in with my parents in New Jersey.
Just kind of what we all go through. Nothing different, really, truly, than a lot of people. We all kind of get in that spot where we got to do that. Where do you go from here? And where do you think that shift was?
My husband had an opportunity that moved us out to Tucson, Arizona. My daughter was about 5 or 6, and we had my second daughter by then. And I was extremely close to my family. The best way to describe it is enmeshed, where just couldn't make a decision without her, my mom, and just a very tight-knit family. So when we moved to Arizona, that was a huge disruption within my family of origin. And I think that's when the shift started.
Okay. And I apologize. Your oldest daughter was 5 or 6, and the little one is how old now?
She was about 2.
Okay. So you've got 2 little ones really running around. Okay.
Yeah.
And you're in a new place. Mm-hmm. And you're pulled out of the rug is out from under you.
Yes.
So what's life like then?
Yeah, so I was working remotely with my company back in New Jersey, juggling that time difference. I was working full time.
So when do you think it started unraveling?
So when I moved to Tucson, I started to recognize some of the toxicness that was happening in my family. And I
Your
think
family,
origin.
Jersey?
The flip side of that is that my own little nuclear family started to get really tight. And I started to basically develop an identity within my own nuclear family. Got to step in more as, the mother. And I know that sounds weird, but my mom was so involved with my children back in New Jersey. She lived down the street. My decisions as a mother were fed through her. There was just a loss of a sense of self, I would say, when I was living that close. So when I moved away, I started to really develop some of that, my internal compass is what I would call it.
So you start stepping into the mom role. How was that for your mom? Was she good with it? Like she was proud of you? Like, you're doing a great job being a mom.
Oh no, super tough.
Okay, let's talk a little bit about that.
She was very angry with myself and my husband for leaving New Jersey. The decision to leave was 10 times more difficult because of that. So when we had moved out, there was definitely a distance, a coldness between my mother and I. That was very difficult for me, moving to a new place, basically stepping into like full-time mom mode. And now my biggest support person was upset with me for that decision.
You've got pressure on top of pressure on top of pressure. What year was this? Can you remember back?
This was 2017.
Where did you mend with your mom? Was it just like, hey, you've been out there for 6 months and now I'm excited and she's coming out to see you? Or what was that? Now where are we at with that layer with the mom?
So she started to come visit, and when she would visit, the time spent changed a lot. It was more about quality time instead of the quantity, which is what we were getting in New Jersey because we saw her every day practically. So when she would come out, we would go and do activities together. She got to see my kids in a different light, in a different way. It was basically a vacation as well for everyone. Most of my siblings would also come out with her. So it was a big family vacation. We'd be outdoors. And I think once she realized too that, a plane ride is not as big of a deal as she thought it would be to go see her grandkids, that's when things got a lot better. So that relationship mended. Probably a year and a half in, my middle sister moved to Austin. And so then I was going back and forth to visit her and obviously fell in love with Austin. Who doesn't? I was starting to feel some heaviness around having my family all over the country. Again, I had grown up very, very tight with my mother and my sisters. So it was a big shift for me. Around that same time frame, I would say about 2018, 2019, my husband got another opportunity for a job, and it was in Austin.
Oh, stop.
Yeah.
Perfect. You're like, yep. We're going.
Yeah, it was it was a very contentious conversation with him because we loved Arizona, but the driving force is I really wanted to be closer to a family member, my sister, obviously, and I wanted my kids to have family in their life.
Yeah, that's important. So you guys all took off from Arizona and you moved to Austin.
Yeah, we packed up and moved to Austin.
You hit 2020, you have your baby in 2021, and now you're sitting there kind of in a dark night of the soul, it sounds like, on prescription drugs, not really sure, knowing exactly what the root cause of this was. Mm-hmm. And you went down this rabbit hole looking at ayahuasca. Was there any of your friends that had experienced it?
No, I didn't know one person personally that had ever done this.
And the only reason that you wanted to take that step forward was because you just wanted to...
It's actually a quote, and I love this quote because it explains it so perfectly. It was the pain of staying the same was greater than the fear of the change. And that change for me was doing ayahuasca.
Have you done drugs before?
No.
So you never smoked anything? No. Go for the big guns. If I'm going to shoot a gun, I'm going to go for the cannon.
That's my MO.
Holy moly.
That's my MO. But I had drank in high school, drank in college, never tried any hard drugs. I think I tried pot twice, hated it. So again, it was funny because it was something that I had never considered. Always had this stereotype about people who took psychedelics. They're these hippy dippy people. They live in the woods. Through my research, I realized how wrong I was about that stereotype.
We're talking to Ryan, who has done 4 different ceremonies in ayahuasca, and she's here sharing her information. What made you connect to ayahuasca? Like, what was that?
So one of the things the shamans that run these ceremonies will say to you, you are called by ayahuasca. And I had read that in my research, that a lot of people were called to it. I realized that I had been called. And the way I describe it is anywhere I looked, it was in my face. There were documentaries on my recommended Netflix list.
Of course there was.
There were ads about different research studies that I should look into. And, I can always chalk that up to algorithms and being served these different things. However, for whatever reason, my brain decided to pay attention to it. And that's what I describe as being called. It was everywhere I looked. Every podcast I would listen to would be talking about the power of psychedelics and how it's changed people's lives and healed them from addictions and issues that they've been having with depression or anxiety. It almost became something I couldn't ignore.
What does your husband think at this time? Is he like, oh, let's do it together?
So my husband is such a great sport. He is not a risk taker. He is not that adventurous. One of the best sidekicks. And when I told him that, hey, I'm all in, I'm going to do this, he was like, hell yeah, I'm with you. Let's go.
Okay, so he did it too with you.
Yeah.
So what do you prepare? How do you do this? Let's walk through a ceremony. Let's walk through what this looks like.
Mm-hmm. I'll start with how I found it. It is still very underground. I would say in the last 2 years, it's gotten more talked about, more popular. During that time, I really had to dig and find where people were finding these ceremonies. And I started on a website called safeceremonies.com. It's basically a review site within your state of different facilitators and shamans. And they have their level of training on there, so you can see if they're from some of these indigenous countries that actually use ayahuasca on a regular ceremonial basis. And then you can also see different people's experiences with what they thought of the ceremony. And then from there, you reach out to, there's usually a person that's a host or someone that facilitates all the logistics. You're reaching out to them. And then there is an intake process, which I always recommend everyone look for this. I think the intake process is incredibly important, because not everyone is safe to do ayahuasca. There are certain medical and health issues that prohibit people from doing it. It increases the risks. So I always say that's a really important step. This is actually one area I hope to see get a little better in terms of doing a ceremony. There's not much preparation as it stands now. The one thing they will ask you, the shaman will ask you to do, is what's called a dieta. And it's a 2-week special diet that they want you on. So it's pretty much all plant-based. They want you to remove red meats and all processed foods, all alcohol, all drugs. Medications are okay, but again, that's why the intake process is really important to go through, so you know that. They also want you to refrain from watching violent movies or reading violent material on the internet. Finally, they want you to abstain from sexual intercourse as well.
Okay, so you have to go on this special diet. You have to refrain from sexy time. You've got to do all that, everything. Interesting, sexual intercourse is not, you can't have sex.
It makes sense. I didn't realize this until about a couple months ago, but it makes sense because sexual energy is actually super powerful life force. The whole idea around it is that the facilitator really wants you to keep those energies within your body so that when you go through your experience, you get the most out of it. If you're fighting those feelings of addiction, for example, the ceremony is going to help bring up some of the reasons why that addiction is there and get to that root problem. So they want them to be very powerful within your body before you go into ceremony.
Okay, so you've done everything. Both you and your husband followed the protocol. This is a 2-week protocol that you have to be on.
Yep.
Let's walk into that ceremony.
So every ceremony is a little different. The first time I actually pulled up to a woman's house in Arizona.
Okay, so this is basically, you do ayahuasca what year?
2022.
Okay, 2022, your third child's already done.
Yep.
Now you go through this ceremony, and where is your first ceremony at?
My first ceremony is in Phoenix, Arizona.
Okay. And you said each ceremony is a little different. Everybody has different ways or where they're doing it. Why did you choose to go back when you're living here in Austin?
One of the most important things about choosing a shaman or facilitator is how comfortable you are with them. Do your energies click? Do they understand the reasons why you're doing ayahuasca?
Okay.
So the first facilitator that I used was located in Phoenix. So most of the ones I had found were part of those big retreat centers. I wanted a private ceremony first time because I was not sure what was going to happen.
Because when you say private, that just means you and the shaman.
Yes.
Or you and your husband and shaman, but not like when you say retreat centers, we're thinking big, gigantic, everybody's
30 plus.
Okay, so you go back to Arizona because you want a single private one.
Yeah. We got on a plane, we landed, and then that evening we showed up at her house, and it was in a neighborhood. It was really a roll of the dice, big trust moment for me. Like, okay, we're going to do this in somebody's house.
Was it a nice neighborhood, like a fancy one?
It was a really nice neighborhood.
Okay.
Yeah. So we walk in, and the facilitator, she was fabulous. She made us feel right at home. She just handed us a cup right as we walked in. And she said, sorry for the rush, but it takes a little while to kick in. Take this. We'll talk through all your questions. It tasted pretty gnarly. You know those little cups you get at the dentist?
Like a Dixie cup?
Yeah, but the mini ones.
Okay.
It was very small amount.
You go through this psychedelic trip, you're going to somebody's house. I mean, you got to really make sure you're being careful.
Oh, yeah.
And I want to make sure we express that. Don't roll up. But you did your research on this lady.
Oh, yeah.
How long do you think you did that research on this lady?
Ooh, I would say at least a month. Found her through a different organization within Arizona. And she didn't have any availability for the time at the retreat center that we were looking at. She didn't have space for that private ceremony during that time. She had offered to do it at her house.
Okay.
But again, I mean, researched the organization, the shaman herself, and there's different forums and websites that you can do this on. You have to be careful, especially now as it gets more popular. Not everyone is trained.
And everybody's looking to make a buck.
Exactly.
And you're there. You're vulnerable.
Yeah.
How long does that take before it really starts kicking in?
The first time, it probably, I would say about an hour and a half.
Oh, okay. So you got a few. So,
yeah.
Okay. So you guys are talking and you have all these questions. Any questions that you can give out that you came up with and you're like, oh, I want to share that with my family and friends?
I would say not any questions before ceremony because you don't want to psych yourself out. You do want to be in a good headspace. I will say, know your intention of why you're doing the ceremony. One of the best things that you can do is journal this and write it out. What do you want to change about your life? What are you not satisfied with? What are you looking for out of this experience? And when you have that on your mind, when you go into ceremony, you will get exactly what you're looking for and exactly what you need. So I would say the preparation with your intention is probably the most important thing that you can do.
So an hour and a half goes by. Let's walk us through some of the feelings and the things that happen to the body. Are you laying down on a mat now? Are you outside? Where does this look like now?
Yeah, you have a mat that you're on. And this is pretty standard for most ceremonies. You have a mat and then you have a bucket next to you. This is one of the things I feel like everybody knows about ayahuasca is the purge bucket. So this is where if you get sick, this is where your goods go. And as the ayahuasca hits, I always experience a very light, tingly feeling. That's the best way to describe it.
Tingling in your whole entire body?
Yes. And then you start to get, or at least for me, get lightheaded. Right after that is when you'll notice differences in your vision. And again, everybody and every ceremony is different, so it's hard to explain from there what you'll feel. But
did you purge? Throw up?
2 out of the 4 ceremonies that I've done, yes. But 2 of them I haven't.
Your first one, did you throw up?
No, I did not.
Okay. Did your husband throw up?
No.
Okay, so neither one of you. And I have heard can't hold their bowels.
Yeah.
Is that true?
That's, I always laugh because this is also a huge concern for people about the bowels part.
Thank you. So I'm not the only one. Like I've heard this and
Yeah.
I'm like, oh, I don't know if I want to be going through that.
It was actually one of my biggest fears going in as well. I actually wore an adult diaper because
thank you.
I was going to be prepared, you know, God forbid
You admitting that right now just makes me like love you more because that's huge. I was wearing an adult diaper.
Yeah, it was, that was a scary one for me. With ayahuasca, I've never been so out of it, I'll say, that I couldn't stop what I was experiencing to get up and go to the bathroom or purge.
Okay, you've done this 4 times.
Yeah.
Okay, so you've never been like, I can't figure out what's going on, and you're out of it. You can get up and go to the bathroom.
Yeah.
Okay, that's good to know.
Yeah, and you know, I've done Bufo, psilocybin, and I will say ayahuasca is the only one where I, in a lot of ways, can tone down the experience by simply opening my eyes or getting up and walk around. It's a little more comfortable for me. I'm a bit of a control freak. I like to feel like I'm in my body.
Yes, and that's where I'm wondering with all this, like, because ayahuasca, I feel like that's why the fear, you can't be in control.
Yes.
But you are in control.
Yes, and that was probably 99% of the reason why I didn't want to do it. I was worried about losing all of that control. And there are definitely moments where if you allow yourself, you go. You are in it. You can be there. But there are also times when if it gets too intense, if you're just overwhelmed, sometimes opening your eyes or standing up and walking around is very helpful. Just to give yourself a breather and a break.
When you got sick on the other 2 out of the 4 that you've done, you got sick on 2 and not on the other. How long were you sick for? Throwing up?
It was very short. And this is going to sound really weird. I loved purging in those moments.
Okay.
And I'm going to explain why. Usually, for me, when a purge is happening, I am working through an incredibly tough emotion or certain challenge or seeing something that I don't want to see in a different way. All right. So let's say I'm working through an issue that I have. And those big emotions, those tough emotions that I avoid day to day, they'll pop up. When I understand or when I see a new perspective in that moment, then a purge will usually follow. Or if an emotion needs to come out like anger or grief, that purge will usually follow right then and there. And it is such a feeling of relief. It feels great. It feels like you've ridded your body of that toxic, that dense feeling, that heavy feeling, and you feel like $1,000,000 right after.
So you're not throwing up for like an hour?
No. Some people I've seen, yes. I don't want to set the wrong expectations.
Well, it just depends on what they're going through.
Yes. Yes, and not every ceremony is emotion based. A lot of them are physical based. So you can have no visions or hallucinations or auditory, none of that. You can be strictly, your body needs to go through a physical purge.
Wow.
And those ones are the toughest, I will say. Your body is resetting, it's balancing itself. I've heard crazy stories about things that people have gotten rid of in their bodies. I've even heard someone got rid of a tumor during a ceremony.
Wow.
And these are the type of ceremonies that I think are tough because you don't feel very great. Your stomach is upset. But again, when you get through it, it's worth it in the end.
Okay. We're going to take a little quick break. We're talking about ayahuasca. You can stream us Monday night at 10 p.m. Central Time on kwvh.org. We're back. We're talking to Ryan, who has experienced ayahuasca in different ceremonies, sharing her knowledge with us. How long is ayahuasca? How long does it last?
I would say 4 hours. Peak of that, 2 to 3. You feel the effects starting, and by the time it's worn off, completely done, I would say 4 to 6 hours. And when I'm saying the peak of it is when you are in it emotionally 2 to 3 hours.
Oh, that peak is 2 to 3 hours.
Yeah.
Holy moly.
Yeah.
Wow.
It doesn't feel like that, though. You're not sitting there like, oh, it's been 2 hours. It completely stops.
Can we talk a little bit about some of the experiences?
A lot of my first one was hanging out with my little self. All different ages, different stages of myself. And this is one of the coolest things about ayahuasca is you get to see yourself as completely different people at different stages of your life. It's neat because you're obviously different in those stages, but you get to interact with yourself as yourself in that stage. One point I was my 5-year-old self, and that version of me was very silly and light, and I spent about 45 minutes laughing hysterically.
You weren't grown-up Ryan talking to little 5-year-old Ryan. You were actually experiencing 5-year-old Ryan.
Yeah, like 5-year-old Ryan stepped into my adult self. I was aware of both presences. It was fun. It was light. I got to remember life is not that serious, and I am a funny person, and I gotta be less serious sometimes. And that was a really fun moment during the ceremony. Not everything is crying and dread and screaming. It can be a lot of fun. Laughing is actually also a way to purge. You can throw up, you can laugh, you can yawn. There's all these different ways that your body can mimic getting that energy out. One of the rules that they give you before ceremony is that you shouldn't be interacting with other people around you during the ceremony because you don't want to interrupt anyone's processing of a situation or a challenge. During our first ceremony, I was very respectful of that, probably until the end of the ceremony. And then there was some interaction that got to happen, which is very typical of most ceremonies. Toward the end of when everyone is coming off of ayahuasca and feeling a little bit back to reality, interactions are really cool too.
How do you know that before we jump into that?
Couple of things. The first one I'm going to explain is kind of hard. There's a collective consciousness that happens during ceremonies. So while you're having your own experience, collectively as a group, there is energy coming together. So every ceremony, depending on who you're doing it with, there's almost a theme that you start to pick up on. And it's hard to explain other than you just feel it. I hate that answer. But it's more of, when everyone is in their process because you feel this, that there's an energy in the atmosphere. You're in a circle, by the way, if you're in a bigger. So I've been to bigger ceremonies now, and everyone's facing in a circle. So you see a lot of what's going on, but you're also feeling what's going on. A lot of the times you'll look across the circle and you will go into the person across the circle, you'll go into their body and you'll start to feel their experience. That's also a good indicator that you probably want to shut your eyes and come back to yourself because, some of the feelings that you pick up in these ceremonies are not necessarily yours. And that's why it's really important that you are in your own space, in your own bubble there.
Can you describe any of the other ceremonies that you've gone through, something that was different, never done stuff like this?
The one I did in Texas, one of my favorite ones, was with 2 healers from Colombia. They were very much traditional in the way that they did their ceremony, meaning the ceremony opens up with an energetic cleanse. So everyone is cleansed through sage. There's music going the whole time. So music, no one really talks about this when they talk about ayahuasca, how incredibly important the music is during it. I'll get to that in a second. They cleanse you energetically. You partake in what's called rape, and rape is tobacco. They blow it up your nose, not the most pleasant. You learn to love it, surprisingly. For about 10 seconds, it feels like your brain is on fire, but the thought behind it is that it clears any lingering emotions that may be preventing you from surrendering into the ayahuasca. If you've ever eaten wasabi, how it clears out your sinuses, it's very much that similar concept and feeling. You take some rape, And then you come up one by one to receive the medicine. And then from there, you're pretty much on your own and you're just waiting for the ayahuasca to work through your body. It's much quicker now in ceremonies since my first one. So it's about 45 minutes. And I'm not sure if that's just
stronger.
Every brew is different.
Okay. So 45 minutes. And what do you do during the 45 minutes?
Laying down and going to a state of meditation. You want to be as calm as possible. So it's all about calming that nervous system down and just going through your intentions of what you're looking for. Music is going on the whole time. So you have the aspect of the music coming in. Sometimes the facilitators will do breath work with you, and that helps bring it on a little faster. It also teaches you, if you get into those sticky, tough moments, how to calm yourself down, how to bring yourself back to a homeostasis state of mind while you're in ayahuasca.
Beautiful. I want to touch a little bit on ego. Did you experience any of the ego and what that was like?
Yeah, man, ego is all up in the ceremonies. So one of the things that came up, I realized I was so externally focused. And this was kind of the aha moment of what happened from that time frame of 2020 to 2022 when I did my first ceremony. I was so focused on being this person that I was supposed to be. I was supposed to be this rock star in my career. I had to have it all together as a mother, perfect wife, and then have a hobby and friends. Everything that I did was focused on my external world, how much money I made, what my title was at work. And when I went into these ceremonies, I started to realize that I am really not any of these people. I don't fit in these boxes the way that I'm supposed to, the way that I've been programmed or taught to by whoever, society, my family, community. And it was that moment that I was able to see who I actually was, my authentic self. And it's so, when people get to see their authentic selves, that is when the ego immediately dies. Because your authentic self is so beautiful. I've never met a person that said, I really don't like my authentic self. No one's ever said that. It's one of the most beautiful, rewarding feelings. It's the number one reason a lot of people do ayahuasca and love it, because they see how beautiful their own light is and how bright it shines. The ego goes away immediately. And I don't want to make it sound like I did these ceremonies and now I'm not an ego-facing person. It's not a magic wand with any of this. But you get to see enough of a glimpse of, hey, actually, I don't like what I do in my career. I actually am more passionate about XYZ. So it's when you get to see those little glimmers of that, it's like a nugget when you leave the ceremony. And you're like, okay, I know my ego is, being a vice president at this company, making all this money. I don't really enjoy it, but I actually enjoy this other passion that maybe it doesn't make a lot of money or doesn't have a big title. That's who I actually am. And I know I need to follow that because that's where my light is. That's where I'm going to show up in my most authentic self. And when you show up that way, you're fulfilled and you feel free. And that's really what I think everything is about is feeling fulfilled, free, and being your most authentic self in all situations. There's a purpose for ego. We make ego sound like it's this negative thing, but for a lot of us, we've been in situations where we need to protect ourselves. And that's where that ego comes in. And it does protect us in certain environments. It's when we're out of those environments and we move on, when we carry that ego with us, then we start to run into those issues and the unalignment that we find ourselves in.
Thank you for opening that up. Do you feel you're not so ego-based? Authentic self is here more?
Oh, definitely.
Do you feel like it was that first ayahuasca that you found that, or did it take you a few of them?
It took me a few. A lot about the after part of the ceremony is actually why I went back to get my master's, is this piece to it. The integration is so important after the ceremony. After my first one, I thought, well, there we go. I'm healed. I'm good. I'm going to take on life as this new spiritual warrior. And when you're not integrating the experience, because there's, nothing is given to you like, this is what's wrong, this is what you need to do. A lot of it is metaphors and very symbolic. And it's up to you now to decode that and understand. It's also up to you to take that feeling that you felt during ceremony and then work it into your everyday life. We can't live in this realm all the time as much as we would all love to live in the spiritual realm or wherever you go in ayahuasca. Now you need to bring it back to 3D and understand how this applies to my life and how I make it work. So a lot of that is through integration. Currently, there is not really anything that helps you with integrating your experience other than journaling is probably one of the most common go-to that people will tell you. I've actually taken it to my own counselors. They've helped me integrate some of these things into my life. As far as being more authentic moving forward, first understanding it, right? Integrating it, seeing how it can exist in the 3D. But then it's also having the courage to try it out. After my first ceremony, about 6 months later, I decided I needed to leave my job. It was something that it just wasn't working for me. And it took a lot of courage to do that. And that was a big moment for me to put that ego aside and say, like, this is not for me. I'm going to have to walk away from this title. I'm going to have to walk away from this money because my authentic self is worth it. Talking about an illegal substance is a big one for me too. I mean, I've always been all about reputation and showing up as this perfect person. But then coming to the terms, this is such a powerful healing tool for people. More people need to be talking about it. I put that ego reputation aside so that I could bring my experience to people. And if I help one or two people, that's worth it.
That's so beautiful. Ryan, thank you so much. You've been sharing so much beautiful peace with this ayahuasca. And I feel like I could just dig into your brain and over because I'm so intrigued with it. And you've opened up so much sharing your personal experiences. Give us a little insight on how long that integration took after the first one, after the second one.
The first month after ceremony, you're usually riding that high. They're pretty good about saying, hey, now don't make any big decisions in the next couple weeks because here's what you can expect. And they'll talk about how important integration is, and journaling can help you get there. A couple of them actually will have integration calls once a month after ceremony. So once you've gone through ceremony, they wait about a month. And then with the whole group, they'll have a big call. Everybody kind of shares where they're at. I should also add, right after the ceremony is over, there's usually an integration circle where everyone gets to share their experiences and what they saw, what they learned. And this is also one of my favorite parts of doing a bigger ceremony because you learn so much from other people. So even though the guy next to you saw dancing flamingos and it meant to him XYZ, there's always something that you can take out of it. And this is where that community theme kind of pops up because you'll start to notice that things that people were experiencing and feeling were very, very similar to different themes that you were experiencing and feeling. That's why that integration circle at the end is so powerful because you're going to grab some stuff from that. The ceremony will usually begin at 10 p.m.
Do you stay there and sleep?
Yes.
No.
Yes.
Whoa.
That's an experience in itself. Yeah.
Okay. So I'm thinking you show up like in the morning and then you take off, you're driving home. No. So all these ayahuasca, you're sleeping.
And you're not really sleeping. So it's they're around 10 p.m. Usually we'll kick in around 11:30 midnight, the ayahuasca will. And then around 6 a.m., they'll close the ceremony. So they always have a closing words to close out that piece of the ceremony. Usually these ceremonies are 2 or 3 nights long. They'll be back to back as well. So these are the bigger ones that you'll find. Private's different. But so you'll get there at 10 p.m. They'll close it out around 6 a.m. And then during the day is when you will sleep. You'll get some food. You can talk to people. Some ceremonies, they'll offer what's called Bufo in the afternoon. That's a different psychedelic.
Is that a frog?
That's the frog one. And Bufo is only about 15 minutes, so it's the facilitator. Not everyone agrees with doing Bufo in between. But again, this is all up to the shaman.
Do your research.
Because trust is a big one to do this. And then usually around 8 p.m., everyone will gather again for night 2. They'll do another type of circle. How are you feeling? What are your intentions for tonight? Maybe some breath work will happen. And then same thing, ceremony will start at 10 p.m. and you'll go for night 2.
Okay, so let me ask you this question. The first time you did it, the private ceremony, was it just the one night and then you guys were done?
Just one night.
Okay, so then did she started at 10 as well? And then at 6, she closed up, or whatever, 5, she closed up. And then did you guys sleep at her house and hang out?
No, we were good. So if ceremony closes at 6, you're usually okay, like you're out of it. And then you eat something and you're good to go, good to drive by 8, 9 in the morning.
So not every one is 2 days long.
No.
Can you find a bigger ceremony, one that's only 1 day?
They're hard to find. Most of them are 2.
Tell me a little bit about that. I'm intrigued why we have 2.
Yeah. So the first night is usually it's kind of getting all the junk out is how they describe it. So it's usually pretty physically, it's tougher physically. You're ridding your body of all these toxins. If you weren't that strict to your dieta, that may show up on night 1. And some of those hard, tough emotions get out of you right on that first night. So
did you wear a diaper on this one?
Not the second one.
Okay.
Because I realized I
don't need that. Okay, I just had to go back.
No, it's all good. I always bring them just in case. So night 1 is usually tougher. It's a little louder in a group ceremony because there's just a lot of emotions, hard emotions coming out. And then once they're out, night 2 is usually known as like the aha night, the beautiful night. It's easier. The journey is easier. The feelings are better. Again, all depends, but typically night 2 is easier, and that's when those feelings of bliss and euphoria and you see the love you have for everybody and yourself. That's when all of those come. So it's just gentler, I would say.
Yeah, and you're still doing the same ceremony kind of opening. They sage you and you go up and get your medicine. Music's playing. They do breath work. All of the same similar things.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, they're really great about every ceremony. The bigger ones I've been to, they're really great about easing you in, so you don't feel rushed. Nothing is about time during this. I mean, I've been to so many ceremonies where they're like, we're going to start at 8, and they're not serving medicine until 10:30, 11, and that's on purpose. It's really the shaman is reading the room. They're reading everyone's energies, catering the entire ceremony to the group. So it's not just like, okay, I got this itinerary, we're going to start. It's very much reading everybody's energy because everyone coming together, that is not a coincidence. There's a reason all of these people are here. There's a reason these people have been matched energetically by the universe to participate in the ceremony together.
Okay, thank you. One of the ceremonies you talked a little bit about Bufo. Is that how you say it?
Bufo.
Bufo. Okay. So you did Bufo on one of these ceremonies did you and your husband both do it or did you just do it on your own?
He did bow out of that one.
Okay.
I did it. But
okay.
Yeah.
And what was that experience? Like why did you do it and what were you experiencing in that 15, 20 minutes of being out there?
Oh, Bufo. So Bufo, I hadn't done a lot of research about beforehand and probably better that I didn't. Everyone kept describing it at the ceremony space. It was the cherry on top. So I was like, okay, how bad could this be? The first night for me was really rough. So I was like, okay, so it's going to make it a little better. It's lighter. They said you feel like air in a cloud. And so Bufo, you inhale it. And within about 5 seconds of inhaling it, I lost complete control of my body. Just they lay you back down. You cannot move. And you are, the best way to describe it is you're somewhere else.
Within seconds like that.
Within seconds.
Your husband's with you. He's probably like, what is going on?
Yeah, he kind of freaked out and was like, is she going to be okay? My soul felt like it left my body. I was in the clouds. It was completely visual. My eyes were not open, but I was seeing all of this as I'm describing it to you. I'm in the clouds. I'm floating. And during my Bufo experience, I did have a classic psychedelic death. And that was an experience.
What does that mean? Explain that.
So I was floating in the clouds, and then I dropped into a body in, I don't know, a different reality, alternate universe. And I was an older woman, and I looked around the room and I realized I was in a hospital, and I could see myself hooked up to machines. I could hear the nurses chatting, and I just had this feeling come over me that I was about to die. I just knew, I was like, oh my gosh, I'm about to die right now. And during the experience, I was fighting it. I felt all this fear. I was really scared. I was like, no, I don't want to do this. This doesn't feel good. And then the minute I stopped fighting, because I remembered, just let it happen. The more you fight, the worse it's going to be. It's not going to feel good. So I just said, okay, like if I'm going to die in this moment, I'm going to die. And the ground underneath me swallowed the hospital bed that I was in. I felt my heart stop in the vision. I felt myself stop breathing. My heart stopped. It was this moment of acceptance of just, okay, I'm just dead. Everything was black and dark around me. And I had a moment of, okay, I'm dead. And then I walked right into this bright, beautiful light. And that's when I woke up from Bufo.
And you're on the ground.
And I'm on the ground. And my husband's standing over me like, what just happened?
And how long was this? 15?
It was 15 minutes. For me, it felt a lot longer. But I will tell you, that was so profound, that experience. I realized that fear, it only lives in 3D. It doesn't exist anywhere else. And I try and remember that in my life, that there's no such thing as fear. There's not even of death. And my fear of death actually completely went away from it. I'm not jumping out of planes or doing crazy stuff because of it, but I realized that death is nothing to fear. It's a transition. And fear is not a real thing in the grand scheme of the universe. It doesn't exist outside of the earth.
So it sounds like you got a lot of great information on that.
Yeah.
Do you think it was a past life?
I actually think it was the future. My son, who at the time was a year old, he was next to me in the vision, and he was in his 40s. And he was holding my hand the whole time as I passed. So it felt like I jumped in the future.
Wow.
Not that I felt it was my future, but it was a future scene.
Yeah. So going back really quick to the research piece, when you are looking at maybe experiencing this, you want to jump into this and connect with it. Where do they you said to go to the website, to one of the websites, right?
Yeah. So the best place to start is really understand what ayahuasca is.
Okay.
Understand what the plan is, even go as far as what the chemical does. Then from there, look at what it does to the brain. Look at the research behind it. Throw yourself in. When you fully understand it, then you can start, I think you can start to look for a place to participate in a ceremony. The best ways to do this, I would start with safeceremonies.com. That's a wonderful place to look at reviews for facilitators. And then also, Facebook has a ton of groups with ayahuasca support, integration. A lot of the groups will promote churches that are sanctioned, meaning they're exempt or they have an exemption.
Have you gone through any of the churches?
Yes. Atma Church, I'm not sure if Atma does ayahuasca, but Atma Church does a psilocybin journey once every other month.
Okay, so find out from the church and then talk to people that have done it. And I know there's a few churches around the country, and find those people, like people that have done it.
And talking to as many people as you can about it in these safe spaces, obviously, like on the Facebook groups and the different forums out there, you're going to find a lot of information. You know, some of these big retreat centers that you hear about, you want to be careful, especially your first time. There is a lot of people, and it can be overwhelming your first time. So again, it's really important to find a place and then actually speak to the shaman yourself. Not always possible, but at least the person that's doing the intake for the ceremony can make you feel at ease. They should be able to answer those questions. And like I said, the intake process is also a really, really big part of that. You want to make sure that they're screening for any medical issues you might have, and they know about your medical history and the medications that you may be on.
Okay, that's all really great information, because they need to know that and find what connects to you, that vibration. Ryan, I want to say thank you so much for sharing this. I mean, this is really an enlightened conversation, and I hope that it connects to the people that are supposed to hear this. If somebody's on the fence thinking about doing this, or maybe opened up a door for someone.
I do too. I really hope anyone is on the fence about it. Throw yourself in, be open-minded. It's a wonderful, beautiful experience, and thank you so much for having me. This was so much fun.
Thank you for listening to Open the Eye. To be a guest on the show, go to opentheeye.com, or you can email at opentheeye13@gmail.com. We appreciate you.